390-3907 or visit broadleys.net. Bryant, whatever it takes.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
If you cannot put Saquon Barkley in the conversation of MVP of the National Football League, I don't know what you're doing. You think about the year that Adrian Peterson won MVP. He had 2,097 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns, 40 receptions, 217 yards. Saquon Barkley has 1,137 in rushing already, 210 receiving yards. He has 10 touchdowns already.
Former Giants running back Rashad Jennings says Saquon's got to be in the MVP conversation. Are we ready to go there? We're going to see a running back in the MVP conversation. Another week in the NFL. I think Josh Allen might have said, yo, Rashad Jennings, what about me? We'll get into that and more right now. Mike Mcgarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, joins us now on the Sports Bash. We didn't see the Eagles on Sunday, but do we think after watching 11 weeks of football that Saquon Barkley needs to be in that MVP conversation, Mike?
Well, he can be on the fringe of the conversation to me, but after watching football yesterday and up to this point in the season, I think you've hit it exactly right. Josh Allen is right now the front runner for the MVP vote. And then I think you'd have to look to somebody on the Detroit Lions, be Jared Goff probably as number two. Lamar Jackson is in there. But right now, Josh Allen would be my choice for MVP. And Saquon Barkley certainly has had an excellent season, but I don't think he's quite at the upper level of MVP talk at this point.
Yeah, this was a week that we saw two games, Buffalo and the Chiefs, obviously, and Pittsburgh and the Ravens. The Lions, what they did yesterday to the Jaguars. I think this, Mike, was a week in the NFL that started to separate the men from the boys a little bit.
Yeah, I think you look especially the Detroit Lions where they hang 55 on the Jaguars yesterday, and you go back a couple of weeks and say, hey, the Eagles needed a last-minute interception from Nakobe Dean to sort of clinch a victory over the Jaguars there. So I think after yesterday's action, if you were like sort of power rank the NFL teams, I don't think there's any doubt that the Detroit Lions would be number one right now. And then you'd probably put the Bills 2, Chiefs 3, and then you're probably coming with the Eagles at number 4 right there. So that would be my way I would look at the top 4 teams in the NFL right now.
Well, it's interesting, Mike. It's another week, and this discussion seems to be going on week to week here. 4th down and 2, and the Bills say, we're going for it. They didn't join the take the points crowd, and we see a good team like Buffalo. They go for it, and it wins them the game.
Yeah, I also think at that point in the game, late in that game, I think you've got to factor in who the other guy is who's going to get the ball there. If they had kicked a field goal there, was there any doubt? There was no doubt in my mind. I'm sure there was no doubt in your mind. Pat Mahomes was going to take the football with 2 minutes to go and drive it down the field for a winning touchdown. So go for, obviously go to clinch the win, and Allen makes a great play and scores there basically. But I think sometimes, when you're talking about this go for it or kick the field goal thing, you got to factor in a number of factors. And one of the factors is who's getting the ball with 2 minutes to go and a chance to win the game. I'm not putting Pat Mahomes in that situation. So in that case, I know I'm normally a big field goal guy. In that case, obviously, I understand what the Bills were doing right there.
Well, it's interesting, Mike, because, Kansas City, I think, leans on their defense a lot. It's one of the things that they've had a lot of close games. And, yes, Mahomes has had some magic. But you look at the numbers, he's haven't had I think he has more interceptions than touchdowns. And the Bills kind of kept them in check for most of the day yesterday. And you're wondering, hey, do they trust the defense? But Josh Allen, after the game, said, appreciate Coach for trusting us to go for it there. And, we keep asking these questions about that, and that's what the player, when he said that, that's what the players want. Trust that we can get 2 yards.
Yeah, I think what we all want is decisions that work all the time. So in the case yesterday,
right.
If he had trusted them and they had stopped him there instead of running for a touchdown and Kansas City gets the ball and goes down and scores, maybe we're second guessing. We're saying, hey, maybe they should have had Kansas City drive the length of the field for scores. What we want is the right decision. And I think a number of factors go into. I think what we want is a right decision, and we want What we want is not a blanket decision where every time it's 4th and 2, we go for it, or every time it's 4th and 2, we kick field goals. We just want decisions made based on where we are in the game, who we're playing, and a number of other factors, basically.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's one of those things where 4th down and 2, they could have kicked the field goal, would have given them a 5-point lead, and they said, you know what, 5 points not good enough, let's go for it, let's get it. Now, it could be a different situation against a different team, and they say the
Correct.
5 points would be good enough, let's just do it, take the points here. So that's, but it was interesting to see a team like Buffalo, a good team, make the decision on 4th down and 2. In other words, it's just not Nick Sirianni making these reckless decisions, or what we call reckless.
Yeah, I think, we don't want the decision to be the same every time, saying the chart says 4th and 2, between the 30 and 40-yard lines, go for it. In this case, or kick a field goal, we want there to be some basic decision-making behind it. You just said it. Pat Mahomes is on the other sideline. I'm not giving Pat Mahomes the ball back, even though he has not had a great season, even though he did not have a great game yesterday. I'm not giving Pat Mahomes the ball back with 2 minutes to go and a chance to beat me. Now, the New York Giants announced today that Tommy DeVito Cutlets is back at quarterback. Yeah. Let's say the Bills are playing the Giants there. I might kick the field goal there, put myself up 5, and say, Tommy DeVito, go drive the length of the field and beat me. Different scenario.
Let's get into that. What's the Giants' messaging here? Are they hoping that DeVito helps them win? Do they just say we've seen enough? I mean, it's almost like, well, do the Giants really want to win games at this point? What are you making a quarterback change for at this stage of the season? You waited too long.
Yeah, I think right now they can't watch Daniel Jones play anymore. It's the end of the Daniel Jones era. I know exactly what you're saying. Are they playing DeVito to give themselves less of a chance to win, to go get a quarterback in next year's draft? Probably. I think what has happened is the Daniel Jones era has come to an end officially. Turn the page looking forward. I think there's some ramifications. If they play him, they could owe him more money. There's money that they might have to guarantee him if he continues to play the rest of the season. Clearly, after what happened in Germany or wherever the hell they were against Carolina last Sunday, this situation is not working out. It's been a failed experiment. It's time to move on, and why not rip the Band-Aid off right now?
All right, Mike Mcgarry from the Press of Atlantic City. It was a crazy weekend in the NFL as we saw the Chiefs finally lose. The Steelers beat the Ravens. And then, of course, the Cowboys and the Texans tonight. You can listen to that game on 97.3 ESPN after the Sixers play the Heat. And it looks like the Sixers might not have Joel Embiid tonight, not because of his knee, not because he's suspended. This time he just seems to be sick. But if you watch the game on Friday night, is it time to get sick over what this season looks like? Paul George and Embiid, they're on the floor. They had Orlando down 9, late in that game, and you look up at the scoreboard and they get blown out of the game somehow. Is this team something that we're starting to worry about?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to start to worry about. I think you've got to worry about Embiid. Number one, I mean, he did not play well Friday night at all. That one play where, the Orlando Magic guy comes and just rips the ball right out of his hand and goes down and dunks it was ridiculous. I think you've got to ask the question about Embiid's health and his overall skills, because if you look back at the Olympics, he had that one good game against Serbia. Other than that, he didn't look great in the Olympics, and he hasn't looked great in the few games he's played now. The only thing saving them, Michael, and we've talked about this several times, is they're 2-10. But there are only 4 teams in the NBA East: Cleveland, Boston, the Knicks, and I believe the Orlando Magic, who are above 500 in the entire conference. So their 2-10 start is not as bad when you look at everybody else kind of struggling. But, yeah, I think there's legitimate questions to ask. What's going on with this team? Even if everybody is healthy, how good are they? And what is just the state of Joel Embiid's game and health? I think that's a big question right now.
Yeah, we'll see. 2-10. I mean, if you think about it, you only have room for like 20 more losses the rest of the way if you want to really be in play for a decent seed come playoff time. I mean, that gets you to around 30 losses. Still not great, but, man, this season's starting to trickle away from it. You're right. Embiid is only averaging like 16.5 points a game. He still doesn't look himself out there. And, of course, they don't have Maxey. Although the bright spot has been Jared McCain, Mike. What is Jared McCain's role now? A full team with McCain, Maxey, George, and Embiid. What kind of role does he have?
Yeah, maybe he comes off the bench and gives you some instant offense if he's capable of that. Mike, I'm not going to get too carried away with what McCain has done so far this season. To me, Jared McCain has been the quintessential good player on a bad team. You know, it's the NBA. They shoot every 20 seconds. There's a 24-second clock. There's hundreds of possessions during a game. You know, they're going to score 90 points, regardless of who's out there. Somebody's got to get to those points. Somebody's got to score for the team. And McCain, to me, though he's shown some promise, shown he might be worth higher than he was picked. But to me, so far, I'm not going to get too excited about him. To me, he's been, putting up numbers on the bad team guys.
All right, Mike, let's flip over to what's going to be an interesting week in baseball. No free agents really signed yet, but we're starting to hear a little bit. The owners' meetings are coming up here. Phillies have to make some decisions. Garrett, Stubbs, Austin Hayes, they have to make decisions on those two guys this week. Will those two guys be back, or do we see a new backup catcher in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I think you're going to see Marshawn inherit that backup catcher role, so I wouldn't be surprised. I think they're going to have a conversation with Garrett Stubbs. I know Garrett still has some options left. Do they offer him, you can start the year at Lehigh Valley in AAA and stay with the organization? My head would tell me that Garrett would probably take a pass on that and go be a backup catcher on another team. But I think you're going to see Marshawn really step forward here and be the backup catcher. I know they like him defensively. There's been some injury questions about him in the past, his ability to stay healthy, but I think he's a really good backup catcher, so I would expect him to sort of inherit that role. And I don't know what you do with Austin Hayes. I mean, my head says you probably look to maybe try to bring him back, considering you did trade some assets for him, and you don't want to, lose those assets and then see Austin Hayes also walk away.
What is your thoughts on Bohm? Is he here, or are they – I mean, it sounds like they want to try to move him. Do you think that gets done?
Yeah, I'd be very careful with Bohm and kind of trading him. I understand why he's in the conversation now. He was benched in the playoffs, obviously. Philly's not happy with maybe his mental approach or his mental outlook in the playoff series. But you're talking about a guy who was an all-star last year, drove in 97 runs. From April to, about the middle of August, was one of the team's best hitters. I understand that, you talk about shaking things up a little bit and you can't run it back, and that means trading somebody, a Bohm, a Castellanos, a Brandon Marsh. But I'd be very, very careful about what you do with Alec Bohm. He's another guy that could go to one of those under-the-radar cities, a Seattle, a Tampa, and really thrive, though I do understand that if the Phillies are going to change the roster, which I believe they're going to do, it's probably going to be in a trade where they trade a good player for a good player, and that could be Alec Bohm. But I'd be very, very careful, before you deal him, because, you're looking at a guy who could be an all-star for the next 4 or 5 seasons out there.
All right, Mike Mcgarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Did you watch any of the Tyson fight?
I did. By the time I got home from Friday Night Football, I put it on. I managed to get through the buffer. It was what I expected it to be. I mean, Tyson, 58, 59, 60 years old. There was just a curiosity factor about it. Great to see, relive my youth there of Mike Tyson in the ring. But I didn't have many expectations going in, so I wasn't too disappointed coming out. It was only 8 rounds. It was only 2-minute rounds. It was like a sitcom watch, like watching Happy Days back in the 1970s or something.
I didn't have any expectations for the fight. I wanted the nostalgia of the Tyson entrance and
Correct.
the walkout, and I didn't
Right.
even get that. Poor Tyson, he tripped. He had a knee brace on. He just looked like a sad old man on the walkout there. I was a little disappointed with that. The fight itself, it was about what I expected. I didn't think that Tyson was going to come out and be some, rejuvenated young man again. But, the whole thing, good for those guys making some bucks. But we'll see. Netflix has 2 NFL games on Christmas Day. You get buffering on an NFL game, there might be anarchy.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first thing I thought about this. How does Netflix, which is supposedly the #1 streaming service, how does their buffering. How do they have buffering issues? How are they not ready for it? And the other thought I had Friday night is exactly right. They better learn from this, because if Christmas Day, if I'm looking at a circle on my TV going round and round while I'm trying to watch Kansas City and who is it?
The Raiders.
The Raiders. I'm not going to be happy no matter how much eggnog I've had that day or how good the presents I got or how stuffed my stocking was. If I got buffering issues on December 25th, there's going to be some issues, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
All right, Mike Mcgarry, what happened Friday night? Who's still alive?
Friday night high school football, we're down to the state semifinals. We have 4 press area teams in there: Holy Spirit, St. Augustine, Mainland. And then on Saturday, Millville and Winslow Township will face off. So 4 state semifinal games this weekend as teams chase state titles. 4 teams left. State championship, state semifinals this weekend, and then the state finals start next weekend. It's amazing, Mike. The high school football season goes so fast. It seems like it was just yesterday. It was Thursday in August, a couple days before Labor Day weekend, over in Ocean City, watching Mainland play Atlantic City in 80-degree temperatures to watch the season start. And now here we are with just about a handful of games left and 4 teams kind of chasing for state titles locally.
Right. Now, Atlantic City, correct me if I'm wrong, they lost the other night, so now they'll sit and wait until Thanksgiving, right?
Correct. Atlantic City played in its first sectional final since 1999. They lost to Washington Township 27-6 in a game that was closer than the final score indicated. Washington Township winning their first sectional title since 95. And now you're right, Holy Spirit will travel up north to play DePaul Catholic, the number 1 seed in state non-public B semifinal. Atlantic City will have this weekend off, and then they will meet Holy Spirit on Thanksgiving Day for a game that will decide the WJFL Constitution Division title. So not only the rivalry, which started in 1926, on the line this Thanksgiving, but also a division title, and probably one of the more anticipated Atlantic City Spirit games we've had the past couple of years, considering how well both teams have played this season. Atlantic City 8-3 and Holy Spirit 9-1, headed up to DePaul on Friday night.
All right, there you go. By the way, Kansas City plays Pittsburgh on Christmas Day. They play the Raiders on Black Friday.
Yeah, I knew it was a good game. There you go.
They play the Raiders on Black Friday. That's on Amazon Prime.
Right. They played the Raiders last Christmas, I believe, and the Raiders beat them last Christmas. So that's why we're probably
Steelers on Christmas. Ravens Texans is the other game on Christmas Day. All right, Mike Mcgarry from the Press of Atlantic City and pressofac.com. There you go. There's your weekend recap with Mike. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Mike. We'll see you down the road. Thank you.